It's week 8. We are at the end of this Prismatic Draft League regular season. It's been an absolute blast. I keep saying it, but it's true every time. It's been a lot of fun to go back to Sword and Shield and see crazy Pokemon and techs and weird Dynamax strategies that we're not used to after playing Scarlet and Violet for the last few years. It's going to be sad to say goodbye to some of these teams, but by the end of this video, we will know the final playoff field, and in the meantime, let's see what kind of show they put on for us in this last week. These are the standings as of the end of week 7. For once, this is not the same table that I showed in Monday's video because that one was incomplete. There was one match outstanding at the time, and now there is not. Sadly, the Alaskan Absols had to withdraw from the season. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Sometimes real life gets in the way. All the best to Absols coach and PDL founder Shadow, who I hope will be back whenever he's ready. But in the meantime, Lunala Plaza gets the 2-0 win by forfeit. And that's actually enough to lift them up into 8th place. So Lunala Plaza currently sitting in that last playoff spot heading into the final week of the regular season. We'll see if they can hold on to it. And of course, they push the Elegancy and the Toronto Rock Slide out of the playoff field along the way. Rock Slide Week 8 set is in Monday's video, so you can go back to that if you haven't yet to see how that turned out, but a lot else to see as we find out how everything goes for everyone else in this playoff chase right here at the end. Lunala Plaza still in it, the Elegancy still in it, the Bashful Bisharps and Dreamyard Darkrais probably wanting to shore up their positions, and everybody above them jockeying for seeding. Let's see what happens. First, the final trades of the season. The trade deadline in this league is at the very end of week 7, so there are just a couple more before there are no more trades to cover at all. This one I showed on Monday already, though the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais dropped Absol and picked up Cottony. Absol was basically just a failed hostage situation when they picked it up. I'm not really sure why they thought they could troll the Alaskan Absols by picking up a Pokemon that the Absols had plenty of opportunity to get before them and never did, but that seems to have been the idea. I did call out that Absol gave them 3 different Perish Song users, along with Wigglytuff and Azumarill, which they could use with the Gothitelle in a Perish Trap mode. It also gave them some physical offense when their strongest attackers, Darkrai and Spectrier, are special attackers. But I think the main reason they picked up Absol really was just to try to troll the Alaskan Absols, and with that regular season matchup behind them, Absol was expendable so that they could pick up a more useful, flexible support Pokemon in Cottony, which gets Prankster and a lot of the same support techs as Whimsicott, though not quite all of them. It notably doesn't get Tailwind, but there's still a lot that it can do as a Prankster support for its team. And in the very last trade of the season, the East Coast Espurr, a team that made a lot of trades along the way, made one more, dropping Braviary and picking up Excelgor. This coach talked about how they use trades to basically do matchup fishing over the course of the season, picking up Pokemon that were favorable into upcoming matchups. I haven't really been thinking in those terms, admittedly. I kind of tend to default to thinking of a trade as more of a long-term investment, so I don't know, and I'm not going to go back now and try to figure out exactly what Braviary brought to the table against specific regular season matchups. You can go back through the videos and try to parse that yourself if you want. But they have now gone with Excelgor, which honestly, this is, speaking of weird Pokemon that I'm not used to seeing because of it's not in Scarlet and Violet, I know Excelgor is extremely fast. I know it has a reasonable support kit. I think of it more as like a singles entry hazard stacking Pokemon, which is not that useful in this format. It does get Final Gambit. It does get, I don't know what it gets. I guess like Struggle Bug, gets like Acid Spray. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the deal is with this team, because Excelgor is a Pokemon that is not very clear in my memory right now in terms of what it does. But yeah, actually, even if I think it gets Acid Spray, so it could create some openings for Pokemon like Latios and Primarina and Colossal. Because even plus 6 speed Colossal, its base speed is so slow that Excelgor should be able to outrun it and help it create openings, right? And I know it gets grass coverage as well, so it's an alternative to Rillaboom to complement Colossal against water types. But I'm just spitballing here. I'm sure none of that is even the main thing that it's on this team for. And I can't figure out what it is. We're just going to have to see how they use it over this week if they bring it, and then over the course of their playoff run, because of course this team definitely has made the playoffs. Time to go and see who else will make the playoffs. This was the very last trade of the season. Now we cut to the replays. This week we start with the Ontario Oguris taking on Staff United. Both of these teams have clinched playoff spots already, but this matchup could have some implications for seeding. So let's see how that turns out for them. The Oguris not bringing Pelipper or Pincurchin once again. The two supports that I'm used to seeing for them to set up the Urshifu or the Raichu, but they have brought this kind of mode a few times where they just have a solid mix of tanky Pokemon, offensive Pokemon, hard to break core all around. Urshifu can still punch through things pretty easily without a teammate setting up rain for it. We've also seen them run Dynamax Urshifu and not Gigantamax Urshifu consistently so far, so in some positions it can even set up its own rain, and Raichu can set up its own electric terrain if it maxes. We've got the Aegislash, which I think could cause a lot of trouble for a Regigigas Weezing mode from Staff United, which we see they have brought here. It also could cause trouble for Sylveon, although Sylveon does get Mystical Fire in this generation. Even so, Aegislash, yeah, can wall a lot of the threats from Staff United. The Dragapult, not so much, but it also would be very strong into Nihilego had they brought that, and Butterfree. So it actually, Aegislash actually matches up extremely well defensively into a ton of the Staff United roster. So it makes sense, very solid bring here. Hydreigon, I don't know, it's a strong attacker. It's obviously very weak to Sylveon. It's outsped by Dragapult unless it has a Choice Scarf or something. So it could be tricky to position, but it's strong into the Meowstic, it's strong into the Weezing. You can see some openings for it. Honestly, the Dragapult seems like the biggest problem for the Oguris here. No one Pokemon that they've brought looks like it matches up very well into that, but that means they probably have some tech hidden under the surface to deal with it. We also see the bulky duo of Jellicent and Fungus, which is kind of a fun little, yeah, tanky duo that should have some decent synergy here. And the Jellicent set will be interesting. We've seen them click Water Spout with it many times, but it could go for something tankier. Fungus, of course, getting all the same support kit as Amoonguss. On the Staff United side, it is Regigigas and Weezing, it is Meowstic, it is Dragapult and Sylveon, pretty much a lot of what we're used to seeing from this team. No Nihilego this week. They have brought the Thwackey that honestly I didn't remember they had, which can be a very powerful offensive threat into Urshifu and Jellicent, and also Raichu, because it takes away Raichu's terrain, and I wouldn't bet that Raichu takes a Grassy Glide or Wood Hammer very well, and of course Thwackey resists its Electric Stab, though not Psychic. So the Thwackey actually looks very threatening in this matchup, and it's a Pokemon that we don't see too often from Staff United. Sylveon also looks very powerful into Urshifu and Hydreigon, has to watch out for Aegislash, but overall, go figure, these are two teams that have made the playoffs already. A lot of strong Pokemon on both sides. One last thing that I'll call out before I finally start the replay is, of course, Weezing with Neutralizing Gas turns off Urshifu's Unseen Fist. So there may be positions where Staff United can protect in front of Urshifu, which is not something very many teams can say. Jellicent and Hydreigon leading. Could not have guessed that one in a million years. Against Weezing and Regigigas, Staff United without fear, just throwing that duo out there against actually quite a few Pokemon that both of the bulky ghost types from the Oguris would seem to cause trouble for Regigigas, but I guess we'll see what kind of coverage it has. Regigigas Dynamaxes turn 1 and goes straight from Max Quake into Hydreigon. That one took me a second. Neutralizing Gas is on the field, so Hydreigon doesn't have Levitate right now. Got it. The special defense boost is good into both of these. Regigigas takes that Draco Meteor pretty well. It's Eject Pack Hydreigon, so no Choice Scarf. Instead it just pivots itself out and we get the Aegislash in here. Aegislash, of course, is weak to the Max Quake, although being immune to the Max Strike is nice. We see Taunt into Jellicent. It's Mental Herb Jellicent, though, and it actually sets Trick Room. That's another thing I could have called out at preview, I think, because they have Fungus, they have Aegislash, they have some very slow threats. They also have Raichu and Urshifu, so they're not committed to Trick Room in this matchup, but Trick Room Jellicent does make a lot of sense here. Aegislash now Dynamaxes. That'll help it take hits from Regigigas, although being slower than Regigigas, it'll go into Blade form if it attacks, and that lowers its defensive stats quite a lot. Weezing protects here, and sure enough, Aegislash goes Blade form. It goes Max Steel Spike into Weezing. Weezing protects around the attack. We don't know whether that's a physical or special Max Steel Spike. Aegislash is very strong on both sides, but it does get a defense boost, so that'll help it some against this Regigigas. And Jellicent shows the Will-O-Wisp and burns Regigigas. So, yeah, the Oguris brought a lot to neutralize this Regigigas, and it looks like it's paying off so far, as Aegislash takes that Max Quake pretty nicely, and then crits Regigigas with a Max Steel Spike. Doesn't quite KO, but Jellicent will get the KO with Water Spout here. Weezing's still with us. It burns Aegislash. We still don't know whether it's a physical or special Aegislash, at least I don't. Thwackey is here, neutralizing gases on the field, so it doesn't get its terrain. It just gets wiped out by a Max Steel Spike. I'm guessing that's off of Flash Cannon or Steel Beam. seeing as the burn doesn't seem to have mitigated its damage at all. Jellicent finally gets taunted, but Jellicent is clicking Water Spout at this position, and it hasn't taken any damage, so it's maximum power Water Spout. Dragapult comes in. There's still one turn of Trick Room remaining, so Dragapult, as the fastest Pokemon in this matchup, is actually very vulnerable. And we've seen Staff United bring Choice to Dragapult. It doesn't have to be. It might have Protect. It might not. It looks vulnerable against these two slower Ghost types in Trick Room. It does Protect. Okay, so they get out of the Trick Room. Aegislash uses Shadow Ball. I think, yeah, we knew it was special Aegislash by this point. Staff United still holding on. Dragapult now flips around to being extremely threatening with Trick Room over. Aegislash goes for King's Shield, but Dragapult just goes for Phantom Force. Phantom Force, of course, hits through Protect, even if they get a double. There's not really any point going for it. Jellicent gets poisoned by a Sludge Bomb. Weezing getting slowly chipped down, but Weezing has sat on the field for a long time now with that +2 special defense. And Aegislash, at +3 physical defense, survives the Phantom Force as Hydreigon switches back in. Hydreigon is knocked out by Sludge Bomb, but Aegislash will get a chance to attack now. And it's Shadow Ball into Dragapult, and it one-shots. And so Weezing has sat on the field for 7 turns now, but there's just no way it has the power to break through. It doesn't even have a coverage move for the Aegislash. The Oguris is playing this one a little bit carefully, though. Fungus switching in as Jellicent sets the Trick Room back up. Puts the Weezing to sleep. Jellicent recovers. And the Oguris have just locked this game down. The side Pollen Puff honestly seems a little overkill, but they do get maximum power Water Spout. Weezing still survives because of those special defense boosts. But another Pollen Puff into Water Spout will get the KO here. So, absolutely dominant game 1 for the Ontario Oguris. I was surprised to see the Regigigas lead because the Oguris, you could tell at preview that they brought a lot to shut that Pokemon down. And at this point now they've shown even more of what they had for that. They didn't even bring the Urshifu, which is itself a massive offensive threat to Regigigas. So I don't know that we'll see Regigigas again in this set, but we'll just have to go to game 2 and see what kinds of adjustments Staff United make. Hydreigon leading now with Urshifu against Meowstic and Dragapult. Okay. Urshifu switches out to Aegislash as Dragapult Dynamaxes this time, and so does Hydreigon. Okay, so Dragapult I called out for being extremely threatening, at least outside of Trick Room, to the Oguris. They don't seem to have great answers to it. We know it's Eject Pack Hydreigon. Oh. Okay, Hydreigon is probably one of their best answers to Dragapult. It is weak to Dragon, but it can hit back extremely hard if it gets the chance. One thing I don't know, if Dragapult goes for either one, Max Phantasm or Max Wormwind here, either one of its stab max moves causes a stat drop on the opponents. Is Dynamaxed Hydreigon switched out by its Eject Pack after one of those drops? I'm not sure. Eject Button works on Dynamaxed Pokemon. I would guess Eject Pack probably does, but we might be about to find out. Max Wormwind into Hydreigon, gets the attack drops, and it does force Hydreigon out. That's so funny. Jellicent is forced in. Clip that. These Ontario Oguris, yeah, they're looking extremely vulnerable against the Dynamax Dragapult. Meowstic sets Light Screen. Max Phantasm just wipes out the Jellicent that was so tanky in Game 1. No Trick Room this time. Shadow Ball back does actually less than half to Dragapult, and it activates a weakness policy. And what is Urshifu doing to this Dragapult? Aegislash is dropping into a Max Phantasm. That is the last turn of Dragapult's Dynamax, but Urshifu almost gets wiped out by a Psychic from Meowstic. Surging Strikes into Dragapult. Still not doing very much. Dragapult's Dynamax is over, but it's still here. Oh, and it's Life Orb Urshifu, so it drops to the recoil, and suddenly it's just Hydreigon. Where did its teammates go? Meowstic just clicking Light Screen again because Hydreigon is immune to the Psychic, but a Dragon darts. Oh my god. The Ontario Oguris Pokemon are just gone. Well, what did I say? The Dragapult looked threatening at preview. And it's really unfortunate for the Oguris. The Eject Pack Hydreigon really backfired there, being activated by the Max... It was Wormwind, right? By the Max Wormwind. Crazy set between what have been two of the top teams so far this season. Two very one-sided games, but one each way. No playoff spots on the line, but maybe some seeding. Who knows which team will get the better of the other in Game 3. Do the Oguris have a secret Dragapult counter that we haven't seen yet? Will Staff United, as they like to do, switch things up and bring a different mode, even though the Dragapult was so effective last game? Let's just jump in and find out. Jellicent and Fungus against Meowstic and Dragapult. This looks to me like the Oguris really want to get the Trick Room set up this game, which makes sense. Dragapult Dynamax is turn 1 again. It's Fake Out into Fungus, so there won't be any Rage Powder. We know the Max Phantasm KOs Jellicent. I think. Maybe it was +2 last time. I don't think it was yet. But in any case, I'm right. It KOs Jellicent, so there will be no Trick Room in this game. Aegislash comes in. Aegislash is so well positioned against the Dragapult in Trick Room, but outside of Trick Room, Light Screen, Max Airstream to take out the Fungus. We know Aegislash Shadow Ball doesn't do enough damage. Oh, well, it's not Shadow Ball, it's Max Phantasm. It still doesn't KO the Dragapult, though. Clear Body prevents the defense drop. That's probably not that important here. But it does give them a weakness policy. And Hydreigon is the last Pokemon for the Ontario Oguris. I feel like maybe Urshifu could do something here, but we don't get to see it. Honestly, I'm not sure it could anyway. Max Wormwind does a lot of damage to the Hydreigon through Protect. Does not force it out because there's no Pokemon to switch in. Staff United Dynamax is over, but Hydreigon fails to get the double Protect. Thunder Wave paralyzes the Aegislash, and it's Phantom Force on the Dragapult, avoiding a Max Phantasm. Aegislash can't get around that with King's Shield. It goes for King's Shield anyway. Of course, changing into Shield form does massively boost its defensive stats, but this is +2 Dragapult. And yeah, the Phantom Force just takes out the Aegislash. Meowstic doubles up with a Psychic. No need. It's already gone, so it does nothing to Hydreigon. But there's, once again, after just the first few turns, this Hydreigon is sitting here alone at low HP. There's not much chance it saves this game, and I could say that even before the Sylveon came in. Sylveon and Thwackey are the last 2 Pokemon for Staff United. And Sylveon Fairy-type Quick Attack. Remember, it gets Pixelate, turning its normal attacks into Fairy. So Fairy-type Quick Attack takes out the Hydreigon. And Staff United, after a really rough game 1, absolutely crushed the other 2 games. And this could be a playoff preview, right? Again, these have been two of the top teams throughout the season. If they meet again in playoffs, the Ontario Oguris might have to dig deep to find an answer to that Dragapult, because the Jellicent Trick Room stuff was just not enough in this matchup. It'll be interesting to see the rematch if we get one, and what kind of answer they can come up with. Great start to the week, but again, there are teams actually fighting for their lives here. I'm not sure what the next set is, but let's find out together. Pendragon United versus the Windsor Whiscash. I believe the Whiscash are out of playoff contention, and Pendragon United are competing for the top seed. So there's still something on the line for... I mean, hey, you always want to win, right? There's something on the line for every team every week. But no Galarian Moltres and no Circuitry from the Windsor Whiscash. Instead, they bring they bring some interesting Pokemon, that's for sure. They bring the Pikachu, the Whiscash, the Snorunt. I don't know what they're cooking, but I can't wait to find out. And Pendragon United, just a solid lineup. Charizard and Ninetales, the duo that's so powerful in any Gen 8 doubles format. Garchomp threatening Pokemon like Pikachu. Raichu also redirecting electric-type attacks and threatening, well, the Barraskewda, not the other 2 water types. But the Chlorophyll user of choice this time is Leafeon, which can go super fast in the sun and threaten pretty much anything on the Whiscash side. I mean, Snorunt is not really strong enough to take on Leafeon, I wouldn't think. They didn't bring any grass resist, and they brought a bunch of grass weaknesses, so Leafeon seems hard for them to deal with. And Tapu Lele setting Psychic Terrain can prevent shenanigans like anything Prankster Sableye and like Pikachu Fake Out, except into Charizard, of course, because Charizard is a flying type, so it's not protected by the terrain. But into Leafeon or Garchomp, you know, they might benefit from having, I don't know, Sableye, Will-O-Wisp, or Quash or something, or Pikachu Fake Out shut down. The leads are Ninetales with Leafeon against Pikachu and Snorunt. Leading Leafeon, Ninetales here makes sense. There's no... I mean, the Whiscash could have Weather. I mean, Max Geyser on, like, most of their Pokemon is an option. But the Leafeon is so threatening here that it does make a lot of sense to me to just throw it out there in the lead position. I don't know what Pikachu and Snorunt do. We'll just have to find out. Leafeon going for Detect turn 1, probably also not knowing what they do, except the Fake Out from Pikachu, which goes into Ninetales. Frost Breath from Snorlax goes into the Detect. Snorunt protects here as Leafeon goes for Dig. Okay, so if Leafeon Dynamax, that would be Max Quake. Dig is a little more awkward because it takes 2 turns and you don't even get stabbed for it, but... yeah, but I mean, that's still threatening into Pikachu. Ninetales Overheat goes into the Protect as Pikachu clicks Rain Dance. I called out the Max Geyser option. Pikachu gets Surf, right? So I called out the Max Geyser option on that or any of the water types. I think Sableye... Does Sableye get Rain Dance? I'm not sure. But Pikachu clicking Rain Dance is not something I saw coming. It's interesting. Pikachu is reasonably fast, although I think it is slower than most of what Pendragon United have brought to this game. But it does get the opportunity to set up its weather here. Moody Snorunt, by the way, slowly accumulating boosts, but probably not very useful ones so far. But it takes that overheat really well, presumably with an Eviolite once the rain is up. I still don't know who high PD... Oh, okay. I think I know who high PDL is now. Anyway, hello to you, though, in the chat. The Whiscash has come in the rain, takes the dig, no problem. Frost Breath into Leafeon with that guaranteed crit. It is a guaranteed crit move. No luck there, but it does some decent damage. Snorunt is still stacking up those Moody boosts. The defense drop is not great for it, but the Leaf Blade goes into Whiscash this turn as Garchomp switches in. Snorunt takes out the Leafeon. Leafeon not putting in as much work as I thought it might. Garchomp and Charizard are here. Of course, Ninetales can come back in and get the sun back up. And Pikachu is not on the field to click Rain Dance anymore. Barraskewda is still extremely fast, even if you turn off Swift Swim. But a lot less threatening once it doesn't have the rain. Ninetales actually switches in for the Charizard. It gets wiped out by a Liquidation anyway, so much for Barraskewda being less threatening, as Garchomp Rock Slide into that -1 defense Snorlax knocks it out, and into that not very bulky Barraskewda. Actually does just under half, we'll see if that ends up mattering. Charizard and Garchomp now are the last two against, well, Barraskewda and Pikachu are also the last two. Charizard Gigantamaxes. You would think in the sun there's nothing very threatening into this Gigantamax Mon, although the Whiscash still have their Dynamax available. And of course Charizard can't be flinched by Pikachu Fake Out once it's maxed. That might be a key incentive for them here. Garchomp protects, avoiding the Liquidation as Max Overgrowth wipes out the Barraskewda, and it's just Pikachu standing alone. Can it channel some Ash Ketchum magic? Let's see here. First it sets up the rain. So that's actually kind of interesting because Rain will weaken G-Max Wildfire and Pikachu resists Max Airstream from Charizard. So that's both of Charizard's stabs heavily mitigated. Too bad for it, there's also a Garchomp on the field. And Pikachu Gigantamaxes. If anything is saving this game for the Whiscash, I mean, obviously it's the only thing they have left, but let's see if Gigantamax Pikachu could do it. We could see Max Geyser, right? It could have Surf along with the Rain Dance. We could see Max Geyser into Garchomp. Do you know how much damage that does? I don't. Garchomp Earthquakes. That's about 3/4. G-Max Wildfire takes out the Pikachu. Okay. Unfortunately, Pikachu's still slower than these two Pokemon. I was rooting for it to do something there, but Pendragon United, in the end, locking this game down with just these powerhouses that have been crushing opponents all through the season. Even the power of G-Max Pikachu was not enough, at least in Game 1. But now we go to Game 2. And it's Sableye leading with Whiscash against Raichu and Garchomp. Okay. Raichu, I guess, covering for the Pikachu lead that we saw last game. Maybe for any G-Max Pikachu shenanigans. You don't want your team taking a G-Max Volt Crash, I think it's called, and getting paralyzed. Especially with that speed advantage was so helpful last game. Sableye uses Trick immediately into Garchomp and gives it a lagging tail. Okay. But we see this Sunny Day Garchomp. So lots of interesting weather setters this set. Raichu Volt Switch does 3/4 to Sableye as Leafeon comes in. It's Dragon Dance Whiscash, but it's immediately very threatened by Leafeon. Could have a Rindo Berry. We see the Raichu switch in. It's Rain Dance, so Whiscash will get a Rain Dance Sableye. Whiscash gets a chance to outspeed Raichu, or gets a chance to outspeed Leafeon, knocks out Raichu. The Life Orb Whiscash, no Rindo Berry. Goodbye Whiscash. Hey, it got a KO before going down. That's something. Now Ninetales is here, but Sableye has shown the Rain Dance, so it can just set the rain right back up. Barraskewda Dynamaxes. Max Guard from Leafeon. No Rain Dance. It's actually just Quash Sableye into the Max Guard, so it accomplishes nothing. Leafeon avoids a Max Hailstorm. Ninetales goes for Will-O-Wisp into Barraskewda, heavily mitigating that threat that they just committed their Dynamax to. Sableye sets up the rain now. Max Geyser knocks Ninetales down to a Focus Sash. Overheat, still strong enough in the rain to take out low HP Sableye, and that leaves Leafeon free to launch a Max Overgrowth that takes out the Barraskewda. And so both teams trading blows back and forth, but Pendragon United getting the better so far, as there's only one Pokemon left for the Whiscash. It's the Snorunt. Oh, can it get the greatest Moody boost of all time? Let's see. Garchomp switches in. Snorunt protect. Okay, speed boost, but special attack drop. But I don't think that matters because Frost Breath guaranteed always crits. But Leaf Blade does not have a guaranteed crit. However, it does have a boosted crit rate. And a Leaf Blade crit takes out Snorlax before it gets a chance to do anything else. And so the Whiscash came out swinging this week. They brought some awesome techs. I was really hoping to see G-Max Pikachu put in some work, but Pendragon United, in the end, cruised to a 2-0 win and are in the driver's seat for that top seed. They go into this week tied with the East Coast Espurr. So if the Espurr win 2-0, it's still a tie at the top, and I don't know what happens to break it. But right now, that top seed, Pendragon United is the heavy favorite, depending on what happens in the Espurr set. There's only one specific outcome that can threaten it. No Espurr yet, though, as we get Ryangreenblue taking on the Dreamyard Darkrais. The first thing that catches my eye here immediately is the Pichu, which I guess makes sense. You want to protect your water types from the Vikavolt. The Darkrais do have that Politoed, Dreadnought, Swift Swim, Rain offense mode, along with the Zapdos complementing them as well. They have Zoroark. Who knows what kinds of tricks that's going to play. Indeedee. What does Indeedee do here? I'm not sure, but maybe we'll find out. And then, yeah, I think Pichu is here to protect the water types from the Vikavolt. Ryangreenblue bringing that familiar hard Trick Room team. The Vikavolt is extremely threatening when Pichu's not around, so a lot could come down to that positioning, and I think this will be one of many sets this season where a lot comes down to whether Trick Room goes up or not, because Dreadnought has a massive speed advantage, and is just a really obvious offensive threat into Take Your Pick, Golurk, Stack Attacka, Blissey, even Vikavolt, because Vikavolt is weak to Rock. As long as it has the speed advantage, Dreadnought looks like it might well just sweep this thing. With Zapdos helping it deal with the Melodic. But if Trick Room goes up, then we could have a whole different game. So, I mean, that's been one of the storylines throughout the season. It feels like a lot of sets have come down to whether or not Trick Room goes up. It even kind of played out that way for the Oguris against Staff United this very week. To an extent, but let's see what happens this time. Dreadnought leads with Politoed against Golurk and Blissey. No Trick Room setter immediately on the field for Ryangreenblue, so they look extremely vulnerable to this Dreadnought right now. Dreadnought Gigantamax his turn 1. Politoed Scald knocks Golurk down to a Focus Sash, and G-Max Stone Surge doubles up and removes it, so they're leaving the Blissey alone to make sure they get rid of the Golurk this turn. Stone Surge, of course, Water-type attack, but it does set up Stealth Rock. Blissey goes for Skill Swap. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Blissey was trying to take No Guard. We saw something like this before in a past week, didn't we? Blissey trying to take No Guard away from Golurk and give it to Vikavolt for Guillotine. That's what we saw in a past week. But the Dreamyard Darkrais just said no to that this time. Melodic comes in now. The one thing that can somewhat wall the Dreadnought, though not super comfortably, and with the Zapdos switching in, that's going to make its job a lot more difficult. Hypnosis, just raw into Dreadnought misses. But Melodic went before Dreadnought. Is it Scarf Hypnosis? Or does this Dreadnought not have Swift Swim? Huh? Well, maybe we'll get more insight as we go. G-Max Stone Surge, it is resisted, but it's just also just extremely powerful, boosted by the rain, so it's still just 2/3 to Melodic. Once again, we see a red card fail against a maxed Pokemon. It's amazing how often red card has come up this season. Blissey Heal Pulse gets Melodic nice and healthy, but it is now threatened by Zapdos. It is not Scarf Melodic. It must just not be Swift Swim Dreadnought. Melodic avoids a Thunderbolt. And takes minimal damage from a G-Max Stone Surge, so actually it kind of stalls out Dreadnaught's Gigantamax there. Dreadnaught's still very threatening, but somewhat less so without its max moves. And now Vikavolt takes the opportunity to switch in. Does take that Stealth Rock damage, but takes a Thunderbolt pretty well. And survives a Crunch. So after successfully stalling out the Gigantamax, Vikavolt actually, it takes a lot of damage in the process and uses its Papa Berry, but it actually manages to get onto the field without being wiped out right away. As Blissey Dazzling Gleam does very little of these two Pokemon. Dreadnought protects here. Zapdos Hurricane takes out Vikavolt. Okay, all that heroic switching in at the right time, tanking hits. Vikavolt gets wiped out anyway, as Ryangreenblue never even tried to set Trick Room in this matchup. in this game, and praying on Shohei's downfall today, man. Man, I've never been much of a baseball fan, but I watched that World Series really stings all the same. The Blue Jays were just so likable. And I always want to see Toronto get some wins. That's my hometown. Okay, I'm distracted. Yeah, I'm surprised Ryangreenblue never even tried to set Trick Room, because the speed advantage from the Darkrais with all these powerful hits coming out from mainly these two Pokemon is just so hard for them to deal with. Blissey will get knocked out here. Actually, it survives this turn. Takes static from Zapdos. I guess they're just clicking buttons at this point, as they just don't have any significant damage. There we go. Zapdos Thunderbolt gets the KO. Darkrais convincingly take game 1. I just realized Ryangreenblue didn't bring the Magearna, which is one of their most dangerous Trick Room setters. But we'll see if they go for a Trick Room game plan in game 2. Dreadnought and Politoed once again. This time against actually the same lead as game 1, Golurk and Blissey. Once again, it looks like Ryangreenblue is going for the skill swap Guillotine stuff, but what do they have? They can switch Golurk out to Melodic, but then Melodic takes a bunch of damage for not much reason, and they still don't get what they're going for. But yeah, no Trick Room setter, and Golurk massively threatened again. They do switch it out actually to Bronzong, so there's the Trick Room setter, but there are probably 2 attacks coming to that slot, right? Scald, breaking the Air Balloon, which I don't think will matter here, and G-Max Stone Surge takes out the Bronzong, and there goes the Trick Room setter. Stack Attacka can set Trick Room if they brought it, but it's hard-pressed to do anything against these two. Now Golurk comes in. The Stealth Rock actually breaks its Focus Sash, so they only need 1 hit now on the Darkrai side. Oh, Politoed has been moving before Dreadnought this whole time, so I could have known that it wasn't Swift Swim Dreadnought earlier than I did. I guess it's Strong Jaw, and they're running that with Crunch as their coverage into the Melodic, because we saw that Crunch in game 1. But yeah, I could have clocked earlier than I did that the Dreadnought was slow. But I mean, into Ryangreenblue, I guess it makes sense, because into Ryangreenblue you don't need that speed advantage from Swift Swim, because all their Pokemon are so slow. So yeah, Strong Jaw to power up the Crunch, perfectly reasonable. I just didn't really consider it before I started watching the games. And yeah, it just takes a Scald to take out the Golurk because the Stealth Rock broke its Sash. That means they can Stone Surge the Blissey and wipe that out. Ryangreenblue did kill 1 turn with that those protects, but the Dreadnought still made great use of its Dynamax, and a Scald crit from Politoed finishes the job. Dreadnought missing out on that last KO because his teammate is just too strong. And yeah, it took me a while to put it together. You just don't need Swift Swim Dreadnought in this matchup. It makes perfect sense. But Ryangreenblue, maybe they were trying to get Trick Room up with the Bronzong in game 2, but they just had no serious answer. If Melodic lands a Hypnosis, maybe things go a little bit differently, but they still have the Zapdos to deal with, and who knows what else in this game. They just had no other serious answer to the Dreadnought, which could just sweep their team aside before they could get Trick Room up, plus they didn't go for it in game 1, and so the Darkrais cruised to a 2-0 win. I'm not sure whether they were already locked for playoffs. They might have been, they might not have been, but that will definitely get them in for sure if they still needed it. Next we have Lunala Plaza taking on the Azurbe Chatots. The Chatots have definitely made the playoffs already, while Lunala Plaza come into this sitting in 8th place. So in right now, but vulnerable. Probably a must-win set for them. I see the Carbrank, but I don't see the Shedinja. They're not going for the unkillable Shedinja strat. I'm not sure what they are going for. Maybe some kind of Trick Room stuff with Machamp and Lapras. They do also have the classic Noivern Blacephalon duo that's been a lot of fun to watch throughout the season. But this is a team where it can be hard for me to tell what they're cooking before they actually show it to me. On the Chatot side, we got Tyranitar and Dracovish. It could be Sandrush, Dracovish. That would make sense, I think, into Noivern and Blacephalon, but they could also be doing something else with it. They have the Galarian Articuno, which is a great speed control bot, as we've seen throughout the season, able to set Tailwind or Trick Room or use Imprison to prevent the opponent from doing either of those things. They have the Salazzle, which is just a solid, fast, fake-out Pokemon with Fire-type offense. They have the Clefable, and they've brought Dugtrio, which is a Pokemon that I think they picked up recently, right? I was going to say I didn't remember they had it, but I think they only got it fairly recently. What does Dugtrio do in this matchup? I'm trying to think about Lunala Plaza. What do they have that they haven't brought here? So Zarude, but Dugtrio is not really helpful into that. I mean, you see Dugtrio, you think it's probably here to trap something. It's hard for me to see, looking at what these rosters, what that could be, especially since Blacephalon as a ghost type can't be trapped. So I don't know what the Dugtrio is here to do, but we'll find out. Maybe. Tyranitar leads with Dracovish. Makes sense. Very threatening right off the bat against Carbink and Noivern. Noivern Dynamax is turn 1, and it's just Vicious Rend into Carbink. Knocks it down to Sturdy. Life Orb Dracovish. Rock Slide from Tyranitar takes out the Carbink. We don't get to see what that goes for. Noivern also gets crit. Takes it reasonably well for being crit and weak to that attack. And Max Wormwind takes out Dracovish. So Dracovish goes down maybe more quickly than the Chatots would like. Of course, the Wormwind also gets an attack drop on Tyranitar, which is pretty significant. But whatever the Carbink was going for, we don't get to see it in this game. Dugtrio comes in now against Machamp. Of course, Noivern not trapped because it's a flying type. And Arena Trap doesn't work on those. But we just see double Rock Slide, actually. Tyranitar Rock Slide into Dugtrio Rock Slide. And that's enough to take out the Dynamax Noivern. And I see Dugtrio and I focus on trapping. Maybe that's just not what it's here to do. Also, I realize now, they didn't bring Shedinja because they're up against the Sand team. You're just never getting that set up safely. Even if you do, the Sand still takes it out through Sturdy. So, yeah, that was never a serious option for Lunala Plaza this week. I guess, the Dugtrio... I guess just spamming Rock Slide is actually really strong in Lunala Plaza. Specifically the Noivern, the Blacephalon, and the Lapras all being weak to that. So Dugtrio is not super strong, but it gives them something else that can do that and is reasonably fast. Like I said, that was enough to take out the Noivern there. We see close combat now into Tyranitar, one-shotting that, but also weakening Machamp's defenses. Machamp gets burned by Flame Orb, so it has Guts. We see Lapras, but they can't Gigantamax it because they already Dynamaxed the Noivern to take out the Dracovish. So the pressure put out by Dracovish really paying off for the Chatots here in the late game. As Clefable is their last Pokemon, Dugtrio now Dynamaxes. Clefable goes for Follow Me. Redirects an Ice Shard, which I don't think Dugtrio is even too bothered about once it's Dynamaxed. Clefable takes about half from Machamp Bullet Punch. Guts boosted. But is Machamp about to take a big hit here? It's actually Max Rockfall into Lapras. Never mind. It almost KOs. The Sand damage will finish the job. That Dugtrio is hitting harder than I might have guessed. To some extent, that's the power of Dynamax, I guess. As Clefable goes for Follow Me just to be safe. Machamp clearly did not go for Bullet Punch this time, or that would have come out next. But a Max Quake from Dugtrio finishes the job. So I was confused by the Dugtrio at preview, but I guess it does just have solid coverage into a lot of what Lunala Plaza brings. It's fast, it's strong. Does it get Sand Force? It does get Sand Force. So it's probably running that instead of Arena Trap, and that's probably why it's hitting as hard as it is. That's pretty smart, pretty creative. Another decent use for Dugtrio on this Sand team. Honestly, until I said it just now, I had forgotten that maybe it gets Sand Force, but in fact it does. And it hits hard enough, along with the Sand damage taking out Lapras to sweep through this team. So, what will Lunala Plaza do to adjust in Game 2? Will we see what the Carbink does this time? Will we see Noivern prioritize that Tailwind so that they're not outsped by Dugtrio and Tyranitar this time? Let's find out. It's Tyranitar Dracovish lead again. Carbink Indeedee this time, so it looks like probably Follow Me into whatever Carbink wants to do. I think Carbink gets Trick Room, so maybe that's what it wants to do. And maybe they didn't go for Tailwind last game, partly because they were looking for Trick Room. But the Rock Slide spam continues. Follow Me cannot redirect it, but Carbink doesn't take much from it either. Rock Slide from Tyranitar misses Indeedee, but it's Carbink. 2 chances to flinch Carbink, and I paused a little too slowly there. They do get the flinch. But I mean, that's one of the things they'll be playing for with this Rock Slide spam. Here it comes again. It's not doing a lot of damage. And actually, the Dracovish is wearing itself down with the Life Orb chip for not a lot of damage back. But they do get the flinch on Carbink again. That is, again, 2 opportunities to get that, so... It's not the craziest luck, but it's pretty unfortunate if you're on the receiving end of it. And once again, by the way, Rock Slide also has hit Carbink every time while missing Indeedee twice. So that's some good luck for the Chatots there. And a reminder, if anyone is wondering, female Indeedee does not get Trick Room in Generation 8. They gave it by mistake. The only reason it gets Trick Room in Gen 9 is that by mistake it had it in Terra Raids. I think they just copied the male Indeedee moveset, but that included Trick Room, which female Indeedee was not supposed to learn, and later they just made it compatible with the TM instead of trying to somehow ban something that they had given out themselves or something like that. But Gen 8 does not have that issue. Female and DD unable to set Trick Room, so they were all in on the Carbink to do that. It still gets one more chance here, but it flinches again. I have no idea the math on this. Somebody feel free to tell me in the comments. I don't care to find out. But every turn, Carbink was hit by 2 Rock Slides, so that is 2 significant chances to flinch. Still feels extremely lucky for the Chatots that they actually got the flinch every time. And there's some luck involved in hitting every time, like I said. Well, the Rock Slide missed in DD twice. Stop hitting Carbink, Panda says in the chat. Now the Lapras is here. It's not going to enjoy taking Rock Slides. Oh, but it does Gigantamax this game. Carbink survives the Dracovish Rock Slide, but not the Tyranitar one. 8 Rock Slides, every single one connected. And Dracovish, despite being worn down by its Life Orb, still takes the G-Max Resonance. That does set up the Aurora Veil, though, for Machamp. So Machamp might get a chance to go crazy here. It protects now to get its burn. Another Rock Slide into Lapras. Dracovish still has room to attack 2 more times with that Life Orb. Lapras takes another Rock Slide through the Aurora Veil. And Max Geyser will actually finish the Dracovish off and set up Rain. So Lapras no longer chipped down by the Sand. Sand Force no longer online, but Dugtrio will be the fastest Pokemon on the field right now. It can target the low HP Lapras with a max Rock Fall, and it can get the Sand right back up. That's what I think it'll do here. Tyranitar actually goes first, goes for Rock Slide, and then there is the max Rock Fall. It does KO the Lapras. Sand Force, which I'm very confident now that this Dugtrio has, is back online. Tyranitar still just spamming that Rock Slide. Probably Scarfed. As Machamp takes a max Quake. But drops to its burn. And we see in the chat, Panda was thinking about Covert Cloak Carbink, but forgot. And as Mario Man calls out correctly, Covert Cloak doesn't exist in this generation anyway. It's a Gen 9 item. So, poor Carbink. It tried its best. But that's Pokemon sometimes. But that's pretty rough when Lunala Plaza is just barely holding on to a playoff spot coming into this. Honestly, probably won't make it now after a 0-2 loss. But seeing Dugtrio put in work as a late season pickup is definitely a lot of fun to watch. So, solid games by that Pokemon as a late game Dynamax sweeper in both of them. Next we have the Elegancy versus the Bashful Bisharps. The Elegancy, another team fighting for that last playoff spot. The Bisharps probably in already, but I'm not sure it's guaranteed. The Bisharps bringing that familiar trio of Ninetales, Tapu Koko, and Arctozolt. They do also have the Arctovish that put in a lot of work against our Toronto Rock Slide last week. The Heatran that was a nightmare for the Toronto Rock Slide last week, and the Slowking giving them a Trick Room mode if they want it, although this team is geared more toward fast attackers, like most of what we've seen from them this week. Slowking could even just reverse Trick Room, right? Because the Elegancy have a very Trick Room oriented team, although it doesn't look so much that way this week. They didn't bring the Hatterene or the Escavalier, both of which have been massive threats before. They have brought the Alolan Exeggutor, which is extremely weak to the 3 ice types and 1 fairy type on the other side. So it'd be interesting to see what that's supposed to do here. It actually could see them using Alolan Exeggutor as a Trick Room setter, maybe with Liepard copycat strats. Because Alolan Exeggutor is going to have a very difficult time taking a hit to actually get Trick Room set up, but I can't imagine what else is here to do. So it could be Dynamax the Exeggutor, use Trick Room, which turns into Max Guard, use Liepard Copycat to set Trick Room up with priority, which is an established Gen 8 strategy that I've mentioned a few times this season. But that's just a guess, because I don't know what else the Exeggutor is here for. It is, again, massively threatened by all of the fast attackers on the other side. But the Elegancy have otherwise, they brought their own fast threats in Starmie and Nidoking. They brought Throw, which, I mean, it just makes sense. It's stronger to the ice types. It has Wide Guard to help with Dazzling Gleams, although it is weak to the fairy types and the Slowking. And they have Incineroar, which can intimidate and mitigate damage from mainly the 2 Slush Rush fossils. But I don't know what they're cooking here exactly. It's not obvious to me how the pieces fit together, so we'll just have to jump in and see. As we see Ninetales leading with Tapu Koko, setting up the snow and the electric terrain right away against Starmie and Liepard. Liepard goes straight for Sunny Day, taking the snow away. Or the hail. Sorry, it's hail this generation. Taking the hail away. Makes perfect sense. Makes a lot of these Pokemon a fair bit less threatening. Arctozolt and Arctovish are actually not all that fast outside of hail. So this could create some openings for Starmie and Nidoking, but Tapu Koko is still very fast. Goes for Dazzling Gleam, wipes out the Liepard, does about half to Starmie. What's Starmie doing back? Aurora Veil fails, of course. Starmie sets Trick Room. Okay, yeah, that was an option. Not what I was expecting, but it works. Now Throw is here. Throw is a lot of pressure to put in a lot of work, though. As Poison Jab misses the KO on Tapu Koko, Flash Cannon knocks Ninetales down to a Focus Sash, so it also misses the KO. Ninetales Moonblast does a lot of damage to Throw, and Tapu Koko Dazzling Gleam gets 2 KOs. So, solid effort from the Elegancy, as Nidoking is their last Pokemon here, takes out the Ninetales. Not really that afraid of Tapu Koko. It actually takes about a third from Dazzling Gleam, which is pretty good damage. Tapu Koko can only attack one more time with his Life Orb, but Arctozolt will come in and will Dynamax. Nidoking also Dynamaxes. Arctozolt underspeeds it outside of the hail. So, honestly, setting up the Sun might have backfired on the Elegancy there. I think the Arctozolt might have been faster than the Nidoking in Trick Room with the hail up. But Arctozolt closes this one out for the Bisharps. Yeah, it's an interesting approach by the Elegancy using Starmie as the Trick Room setter there. That's pretty clever, but I think just without the Escavalier and without the Hatterene, they just didn't have enough damage to take advantage of it. So the Tapu Koko was able to take hits and still hit back and get a couple of KOs there, even being effectively outsped because, of course, of Trick Room flipping speed interactions. The Escavalier has been probably the most dangerous Pokemon for the Elegancy all season, and I feel like it could have made a real difference here, so I am surprised they didn't bring it. But we'll see what else they have cooked up here as we look at what happens in Game 2. Incineroar and Nidoking against Ninetales and Tapu Koko again. Ninetales Dynamaxes this time. Interesting. Avoids getting flinched by a Fake Out. Dazzling Gleam does a bit of chip. That's pretty good damage into Nidoking considering it's resisted. And Max Hailstorm takes out the Nidoking. No need for the Elegancy to worry about that Pokemon being threatened. Or the Bisharps, excuse me, to worry about that Pokemon being threatening this time. Nidoking is a really cool Pokemon, one of my classic Gen 1 favorites, and a really strong one with sheer force and Gen 1 Kaiju coverage, but I have said throughout the season that its speed tier has been kind of awkward on the Elegancy, and honestly that has really come through in this set so far, because it was too fast in their own Trick Room to deal with the Arctozolt outside of Hail, and now it's too slow to deal with these two outside of Trick Room. Starmie comes in. It Dynamaxes. Okay, we're going to see Max Steel Spike into this Ninetales. The Sash is broken. Starmie immediately takes 75% from a Volt Switch, though, and it can't set Trick Room because it's Dynamaxed, and now Arctozolt comes in and threatens the Volt Beak. Max Starfall from Ninetales doesn't do that much to Incineroar, and Ninetales does drop to a Max Steel Spike, but U-Turn does 30% to Arctozolt. That Arctozolt is still extremely threatening. Throw can come in and threaten it back, but Starmie is under a lot of pressure here, especially with Tapu Koko coming back in. Throw actually just protects this turn, avoids a Bolt Beak, but Starmie does get knocked out by Tapu Koko Dazzling Gleam. Fearlessly clicked, even though Throw does get Wide Guard. Throw gets burned, so does Guts. Don't remember whether we established that in Game 1. Incineroar comes in and intimidates Arctozolt and fakes it out. It narrowly survives the Tapu Koko Thunderbolt, but I believe it will be knocked out by the hail damage at the end of the turn. Tapu Koko drops the Poison Jab, but I would say it has done enough work, as Throw now stands alone, burned in hail without any Trick Room against Arctozolt and Heatran. Protects to avoid a Bolt Beak. This is the last turn of hail, but Throw is so slow. It's still going to be outsped by Arctozolt, isn't it? Yeah, and Bolt Beak and Electric Terrain gets the KO. And the Bashful Bisharps for the commanding 2-0 win will shore up their playoff position, and I think probably keep the Elegancy out of playoffs, but we'll see when I update the table at the end of this. The Elegancy just struggled to find any answer to this powerful electric and ice type offensive duo. The Bisharps have such a cool draft, and it's going to be fun to see what it can do in playoffs, but yeah. The Escavalier could have really helped here. I'm not sure it would have been enough by itself. And as much as I want to see the Nidoking succeed, it did just have a really awkward speed tier for this team throughout the whole season. Finally, Oh, I forgot to say the thing. Since the Absols withdrew from the league, they don't play the Nothing Burger this week. The Nothing Burger get a 2-0 win. So this is the last regular season set in this entire PDL season. It's the East Coast Espurr taking on the Edmonton Empoleons. The Espurr, as far as I know, without understanding any secondary or tertiary tiebreakers, have a shot at the top seed if they get a 2-0 win, but they do need that because Pendragon United already got one this week. Otherwise, the top seed will be out of reach. They brought the mascot. They brought Espurr. They've also brought their new Excelgor, so maybe I'll get a look at what it actually does. Overall, this team doesn't seem to have a lot of offense, right? Rillaboom and Primarina are a strong offensive duo, but otherwise it's Excelgor, Klefki, Aromatisse, and Espurr. Who knows what they've cooked? They brought 3 fairy types, though, against Venusaur. On the Empoleon side, it is Riolu and Venusaur. Riolu able to set up that Prankster Sun if it wants, or Prankster Rain for Gmax Kingler. Kingler can give them some speed control if it Gigantamaxes while also hitting very hard. They brought both of their ice types. I think they only have 2 ice types. They brought Darmanitan and Frostlass, which could actually be a very threatening, fast offensive duo into Rillaboom and Primarina. They brought the Togekiss. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just jump in. Riolu leads with Venusaur against Klefki and Primarina, so we could see Sun and like Gmax Vinelash here. Light Screen, Sunny Day, Gmax Vinelash. Primarina survives it through the light screen and goes straight for Perish Song. But the Vinelash damage is going to be a little bit hard for the Espurr to deal with, I would think. Primarina does switch out here to Rillaboom, as Riolu switches out to Darmanitan. And Venusaur goes for Max Flare. I believe that's off of Weather Ball, right? This was something Venusaur would run in Sword and Shield VGC. Weather Ball and Sun turns into a Fire-type move, turns into Max Flare. KO's Klefki through the light screen. As Espurr now comes in. Rillaboom Fake Out will prevent the Darmanitan from moving. Venusaur goes for... sorry, I clicked on that by accident, looking for the pause button. Venusaur goes for a Max Quake into Rillaboom. There's no Colossal. I'm not sure what they were doing with that. It might just be a misclick. I don't know. Maybe they just really want the special defense boost on Darmanitan because the Primarina is still here, but I would think Primarina is probably not that threatening into Darmanitan at this point. I don't know. Espurr sets up Trick Room. Okay. And it's Room Service Espurr. What are they cooking with that? Venusaur is at the end of its Perish counter, and its Gigantamax has ended, so of course it switches out to Riolu. Rillaboom Gigantamaxes now. Espurr goes for Magic Room, which switches off Pokemon's held items. So if this is like Choice Band Darmanitan, it won't have the effect of that. It'll hit somewhat less hard. But in any case, Rillaboom underspeeds it, and Gmax Drum Solo one-shots. I do recall that the exclusive Gmax moves of the 3 Galar starters all hit extremely hard, and we see that come through here. We're also getting toward the end of the Vinelash damage. I believe it is over now as Kingler comes in. Gets coaching from Riolu. Espurr goes for Wonder Room, which creates a bizarre area in which defense and special defense stats are swapped. So this Espurr has brought every possible room to the matchup. Okay. Drum Solo takes out the Kingler. Actually, Wonder Room is useful there, right? Because Kingler has higher defense than special defense. I don't know if it's taking a Drum Solo anyway, but Wonder Room does help ensure that KOs. Look at this field. I don't know if I've ever seen this background on Showdown before. And Venusaur is back. The Trick Room is still up. Venusaur gets coaching to try to help it take a hit from this Rillaboom. Espurr shows Psybeam. Alright, we are just goofing off here, huh? I don't know how serious the East Coast Espurr were about that top seed, but Psybeam will chip the Venusaur. It is a Psychic type attack into a Poison type. Sludge Bomb crits Rillaboom, but that's not enough to KO as Max Flutterby chips the Venusaur some more. Still one turn of Trick Room left. Rillaboom's Gigantamax is over. Switches out to Primarina. Venusaur gets another round of coaching as Psybeam crits and knocks out the Riolu. Sludge Bomb back into Primarina takes that out. Trick Room is now over, but Rillaboom can fake out, Espurr can Psybeam. It doesn't quite KO, but they're almost there. Magic Room is over. Wonder Room is still here. Venusaur misses the KO on Rillaboom with a Sludge Bomb, and Espurr gets the KO on Venusaur, winning game 1 with, of all moves, Psybeam. Wild game. What have they got for us in game 2? It's Darmanitan and Togekiss against Excelgor. Don't know what that nickname's about. And Rillaboom. Grassy Seed Excelgor. Give it a bit of staying power. Follow Me from the Togekiss redirects to Grassy Glide. Rillaboom Grassy Glide is just so strong in this generation. And Excelgor Final Gambit also goes into the Togekiss. Don't know whether that was the intended target, but that will take both of those Pokemon out. As Icicle Crash one-shots the Rillaboom. 3 KOs turn 1. Darmanitan looking very strong against Aromatisse and Espurr. Espurr Dynamaxes. We know that it can use 2 moves now. It can use Max Psy Strike, and it can use... Not Psy Strike. That's Mewtwo's signature move. What is it called? Max Mindstorm. And Max Guard. That's it. But that might be all it needs here. Coaching into the Darmanitan. Darmanitan is so powerful. And you know what? Magic Room is not even up. This Darmanitan could be boosted by Guerrilla Tactics and Choice Band if that's what they've gone with here. Wonder Room? Did I say Wonder Room? Magic Room isn't up. Icicle Crash, though, misses the KO on Espurr. Max Mindstorm does about, well, a little more than half to Riolu. Aromatisse uses Metronome and gets Rising Voltage. Unfortunately, it's Psychic Terrain that's up right now, not Electric Terrain. It doesn't do a whole lot to Darmanitan. Can you imagine if that was Expanding Force? Indeed. Espurr going for Max Guard here, coaching into the Darmanitan. Icicle Crash into the Max Guard accomplishes nothing. Metronome gives Aromatisse Earth Power. It just doesn't hit terribly hard into the Riolu. Max Guard, they went for the double, they failed. This Darmanitan is just stacking up boosts, takes out the Espurr. Aromatisse goes for another Metronome. It's Water Shuriken into Riolu. Will it KO? No. 3 hits, not enough. I think even 5 would have narrowly missed it without a crit. The one small interesting interaction there, though, is, of course, Water Shuriken is a priority attack. But because it's off of Metronome, which is not a priority attack, so it doesn't actually have priority here, it does still work in the Psychic Terrain. Darmanitan is now at +4 attack and defense, and Magic Room never went up. Or Wonder Room, whichever. I think it's Magic Room. And Icicle Crash takes out the Aromatisse. And so the Empoleons take Game 2. Will we see Dynamax Espurr again in Game 3, or will we see... who knows what else? Let's jump in and find out. Darmanitan leads with Kingler this time against Excelgor and Rillaboom again. Excelgor goes for Endure this time. Don't know what they're cooking with that. Fake Out will flinch to Darmanitan. As Kingler just goes for a raw Guillotine and takes out Rillaboom. Finally, the Guillotine tech pays off for Kingler. It is a little unfortunate that it takes Life Orb damage on a move that was a guaranteed KO anyway, but... we've seen that Kingler throw off Guillotines before. I'm not sure one is connected before this week. But, hey, they don't have to worry about the G-Max drum solo anymore. That could actually make a huge difference in this game. This game, we'll see what happens the rest of the way, but it could genuinely swing on that Guillotine landing turn 1. Primarina's here. So it looks like the Game 1 mode again for the Espurr. Primarina Dynamaxes. Final Gambit takes out the Darmanitan. Darmanitan will not sweep this time, but neither will Rillaboom, so someone else will have to be the hero. Guillotine into Primarina. Does not work on Dynamaxed Pokemon. Honestly, I didn't remember that interaction, but it makes sense, and Dynamax has a lot of weird interactions. Max Starfall takes out the Kingler. Espurr's here. The last 2 Pokemon for the Empoleons are Venusaur and Riolu. Venusaur Gigantamaxes. Riolu sets up Sunny Day. G-Max Vine Lash does some good damage to Primarina. Max Starfall takes out Riolu. It's all up to Venusaur now for the Edmonton Empoleons. It shrugs off a Psybeam like it's nothing. Primarina uses last turn of Dynamax to Max Guard. It does avoid a Vine Lash as Espurr sets Trick Room, so Primarina will get a chance to maybe protect if it wants. We see Psybeam. It's just Moonblast. So Venusaur will take the hit, no problem. Despite the speed disadvantage, it will take out the Primarina. But Venusaur's Gigantamax will now end. Espurr has the speed advantage in Trick Room. No room service even needed. I don't know if a Psybeam crit can win the game. I think it might not do enough, but even if it crits. Well, let's see. Yeah, crit was actually not even close. And they didn't get it anyway. Venusaur Giga Drain takes out the Espurr. Espurr fought hard here. And the East Coast Espurr did prevent a Darmanitan sweep this time, but the Kingler Guillotine in turn 1 removes their most threatening Pokemon. And the Edmonton Empoleons take the 2-1 win. I believe the Empoleons still missed the playoffs, and the Espurr are definitely still in, but it was an exciting set while we had it. And there's actually one more to look at before we go to the final playoff bracket. This is the last set of the PDL regular season, but because the Nothing Burger didn't get to play this week, they and the Windsor Whiscash agreed to do an exhibition match, so this will not count toward the standings at all. But they decided to do this just for fun, and I actually said on the Discord that they would do it on the condition that I would feature it. So we get a fun little exhibition match before we go to the final playoff standings. And we do get to see the Nothing Burger in action one more time with one of my favorite trios in this whole draft, Mew, Ditto, and Silvally, along with Slowbro, Togetic, and Galarian Weezing facing Sableye, Graplocked, Snover, Gastrodon, Pikachu, and Circuitry. Let's see what happens. The Nothing Burger lead with Mew and Togetic against Sableye and Snorunt. It's Metronome Sableye. It uses Conversion 2, which I believe changes its type in a way that has some relationship with the last attack that it took. I don't remember exactly how Conversion works versus Conversion 2. But I think it changes its type into... Maybe Conversion changes to a type that resists the last attack it took, and Conversion 2 does something different. I don't remember, but I think because it hasn't taken or used any attacks in this game, one of those matters, and there's a reason Conversion 2 failed there. That's a funny move to roll. Mew goes for Bulk Up. Snorunt goes for Double Team. With, of course, the Moody, as it does actually avoid a Togetic Ancient Power, and it gets a special attack boost. Sableye now goes for Will-O-Wisp into the physical Mew. Of course, Synchronize will activate, and Sableye will be burned right back. Mew still going for that Bulk Up. Snorunt still going for that Double Team. Togetic Metronome gets Volt Switch into Sableye, pivots it out, as Ditto comes in and transforms into Sableye. Snorunt still stacking those special attack boosts. Sableye Metronome gets Fiery Dance into... Oh my god, that's so funny. It gets Fiery Dance into Ditto, but because it's boosted by Prankster, I cannot believe how many times Metronome priority has mattered this week. That is back-to-back sets where it came into play. The Water Shuriken working because the Metronome didn't have priority. Here, Metronome is boosted by Prankster, so even though it turns into an attack, the attack has priority from Prankster, and so it fails into the Dark-type Ditto transformed into Sableye. Ditto misses a Will-O-Wisp into Snorunt. Mew's still going for Bulk Up boost. Takes the guaranteed crit from a Frost Breath. It would take one more of those, except it'll drop to burn damage after. That was +4 Frost Breath, though. Mew took that pretty well, even coming from a Snorunt. Ditto protects here on another Metronome that turns into Dark Pulse, as Mew Leaf Blade misses Snorunt. And Mew takes a fake Tears from Snorunt. Frost Breath is going to get it out of here anyway. Sableye goes for Bind. Ditto is immune, off of Metronome, so Ditto is immune to that twice over. It's actually, Ditto is actually immune to that Prankster boosted Bind because it's a Dark type, and also because it's a Ghost type. Snorunt now does get burned by the Will-O-Wisp, and takes 50% from a Leaf Blade, but KOs Mew back with Frost Breath. As Togetic comes back in, Metronome into Mind Reader, does nothing to Ditto. Does Metronome always hit the target immediately in front of you? Because it has been doing that so far. Actually, I'm not sure whether it's random or it's always the one in front. Togetic survives a Frost Breath. Ditto lands a Hex into Snorunt. Even though Snorunt is burned, it does survive, and it dodges an Ancient Power. Snorunt at some point got to +6 special attack, by the way. Sableye still can't do anything to the Ditto. Snorunt avoids a Hex, but Slowbro does resist the +6 Frost Breath, and it is just coming from a Snorunt, so it takes that pretty well. It's a bulky mon. It shows leftovers as well. Hex misses. Snorunt will drop to burn damage anyway. It does get a fake Tears into Slowbro. Sableye actually does have one thing it can do to Ditto, and that is Hex, so it does here. Slowbro rests. Snorunt drops to burn damage, but we'll see if the special defense drop comes into play here. Probably not with Graplocked coming in. Sableye goes for Metronome. It gets Shore up. Palisand's exclusive almost recover clone. I think maybe it heals more in a Sandstorm. But that'll get Ditto back up to full, only to get crit by Hex. Slowbro's asleep, goes for Sleep Talk, gets Yawn. But it fails, so it must have targeted Sableye, which already is burned. Circle Throw brings the Togetic back in, but that gets rid of their own special defense drop into Slowbro, so that actually doesn't seem that helpful to them. Maybe there's just nothing else for Graplocked to do here, but then they have another Pokemon in the back. Why did they bring Graplocked in? Who knows? Ditto activates his Quick Claw, uses Metronome, gets X-Scissor into Graplocked, does like no damage. Sableye gets Mean Look off of its Metronome. They Octolock their own Sableye, which does nothing. I don't know what Graplocked is even doing here. Ditto lands a Will-O-Wisp into Graplocked. Sableye Metronome draws Metal Sound. And then they Octolock the Togetic. Sure. Okay, so if I just try to take a second to get my bearings here. Togetic is Octolocked and has some defensive drops. Sableye is burned at low HP. Graplocked is burned and just doesn't seem to be able to do very much in this position. Ditto has been sitting here as Sableye after being involuntarily dragged out all this time, and they are trading Metronomes, but of course Ditto and Sableye are immune to each other's Metronome moves. It is another Metronome. It's Howl, so that'll boost the attack on the Graplocked, though that is burned, and take 50% from Hex. Survives the Ancient Power, no problem, though. Gets Circle Throw into Togetic and forces it out after Octolocking it. Sure, Slowbro's here, still asleep for one more turn, I think. Ditto activates its Quick Claw, but it must not have gone for Metronome. It must have probably went for Hex. So the priority Metronome still comes out first. Sableye rolls Fly. Hex takes out Graplocked. We'll finally see the last Pokemon for the Whiscash. Slowbro Sleep Talks Rest, but there's not really anything it can do here anyway. And it's Gastrodon last for the Whiscash. Avoids a Will-O-Wisp. Slowbro takes like nothing from the Fly. Gastrodon goes for Sandstorm, because I guess why not at this point, as Slowbro wakes up and lands a Yawn into Gastrodon. Sableye will drop soon. Actually, it drops now to the burn damage. So Gastrodon is alone here. Metronome draws Lunge, doesn't do much. Earth Power does some chip back to Slowbro. It's Life Orb Gastrodon, though. And it's drowsy, and Slowbro can rest. And so I think this Gastrodon will be worn down, but we'll see. Ditto gets Psychic Terrain here. I don't know if the Slowbro has a Psychic type attack. It might. It has one move we haven't seen. It might be able to benefit from the terrain. Sleep Talk here gets Yawn, though. Okay, alright. Ditto uses Metronome. It gets Trop Kick, which is a grass type attack, which would do a lot of damage to Gastrodon, except the previous Metronome set Psychic Terrain. And so all Ditto Metronome moves having priority from Prankster. Gastrodon is protected by the Psychic Terrain. It avoids the grass type damage. And by the way, that was Ditto's last Metronome PowerPoint. Okay. Slowbro. Sleep Talks into Rest. They better hope Slowbro benefits from the Psychic Terrain, because Ditto got absolutely wrecked by its own terrain there. Ditto protects here. Slowbro wakes up and uses Sleep Talk. They miscounted their sleep turns. Okay. Ditto. Quick Claw. Double Protect. Fails. Gastrodon wakes up. Earth Power takes out the Ditto. It didn't have any more Metronome PP anyway. Slowbro just goes for Yawn. Does Slowbro have an attack? Togetic is still here. Ancient Power does like nothing. It drops to a Scald. It's not still here anymore. Slowbro rests at full HP. What is its last move? Are they just playing until one of them struggles? Wait, but this is just losing for the Nothing Burger, right? Because the Gastrodon isn't using PP while it's asleep. So putting it to sleep actually hurts the Nothing Burger.
I can only assume the Slowbro doesn't have an attack. Oh, it is Life Orb Gastrodon, though. So whenever it attacks, it takes damage. But again, that's a reason not to put it to sleep. Slowbro will want to put itself to sleep now and rest. It is taking a lot of damage from the Earth Power, so... I mean, if Gastrodon gets a crit... This actually still could go either way. If Gastrodon gets a crit... before it gets wrecked by its own Life Orb... I'm beginning to think Slowbro might not have a 4th attack. Because Sleep Talk has still never called it. Oh, there's the crit! Oh, but Gastrodon falls asleep now. So Slowbro will get a chance to rest again. The sand damage ends at just the right turn for the Nothing Burger. And Slowbro should have this now, because Gastrodon will eventually wake up, but then it takes Life Orb damage whenever it attacks. It can only attack twice more, and we know even if one of those is a crit, that's not enough. It would have to crit both, I think. Or get the special defense drop into a crit. But it doesn't get the drop. Yeah, so that's not enough. Even it does actually crit, and it gets the drop now, one turn too late. That was actually a crazy back and forth game, and that end game was close. There were ways the Gastrodon could have won that. I am convinced that the Slowbro does not have a 4th move, but maybe we'll find out in game 2. And hopefully we'll see Silvally in game 2. I am down to see that one more time this season with some crazy set, but let's find out. It's Weezing and Silvally. Rock-type form. Okay. Rock-type form into this Water Spam team. I mean, they're not bringing Water Spam right now, but they can on their roster. I guess Rock Silvally is threatening to into Galarian Moltres, but... The Whiscash also have Blaziken, don't they? I never would have guessed this would be Rock Silvally. Let's see what it does against Pikachu and Circuitry. Parting Shot into Circuitry makes sense. They bring in Ditto. That turns into Pikachu. That'll get Lightning Rod. It'll get... Well, except that abilities are turned off by Weezing. I forgot that for a second. So Pikachu does not get boosted by this discharge. Actually, or Ditto does not. Actually, both Pikachu on the field take damage from it, with the real Pikachu taking 50%. That's after a Parting Shot into Circuitry, by the way. Pikachu goes for Nasty Plot. Weezing goes for Corrosive Gas, removing the Light Ball and Circuitry's Choice Specs, so that'll take some more special attack away from it effectively, but now on turn 2, it also removes Ditto's Quick Claw, but I think they're fine with that. Turn 2, Circuitry lands a Hyper Beam. Nope, my bad. Circuitry fires a Hyper Beam at Weezing, but Weezing dodges it. Pikachu Draining Kiss does a bunch of damage to Ditto, but Ditto is able to Thunderbolt Pikachu because Weezing's still on the field. However, doesn't do very much damage. Pikachu is just right back to 50%. Weezing goes for Smokescreen into Circuitry. As Ditto switches out to Silvally, Weezing survives the Hyper Beam. Circuitry will have to recharge now. Silvally takes the Draining Kiss pretty well. And Strange Steam takes out the Pikachu. Sableye's here. Sableye goes for Metronome. He uses Grudge. Grudge works like Destiny Bond, except instead of losing all your HP when you knock it out, you lose all of the PP on the attack that you used. Kind of an obscure move, so just thought I'd throw that explanation in there. If Weezing takes it out with a Strange Steam here, there will be no more Strange Steam PP left. Silvally just goes for Rock Slide. Okay, I guess that's what they're cooking with the Rock form. Circuitry has to recharge. It's actually just Smokescreen into Circuitry. Lucky for them that they didn't Strange Steam the Sableye this turn. Rock Slide misses Sableye, but does good damage to Circuitry. Circuitry Volt Switch into Silvally. Still does quite a bit of damage considering the drops on the Circuitry, but Silvally takes it pretty well. Snorunt is here. It gets Smokescreened immediately. Weezing drops to a Hex. Snorunt gets an attack boost from the Moody when we know it's running Frost Breath. Metronome goes for Howl this time. Another attack boost on the Snorunt. Snorunt takes a Parting Shot. Ditto comes in and turns into Sableye. Here we go again. As Snorunt goes for that double team. But it takes an Ancient Power. Still takes it pretty well. It's Togetic. Its Ancient Power is not that strong. But this time Togetic does get this +1 boost to all of its stats, which I believe is a 10% chance from Ancient Power. Snorunt just keeps stacking those attack boosts that it probably can't use. Sableye Metronome lands a Searing Shot. I didn't know Searing Shot was a spread move, but there we go. That is, of course, Victini's other signature move besides V-Create. So landing a mythical Pokemon signature move off a Metronome is pretty exciting. But Ditto is immune because it's Prankster boosted. And Ditto is currently a dark type. And it doesn't do a whole lot otherwise except that it burns the Togetic, which is something. Ditto lands a Will-O-Wisp and a Snorunt. Another Ancient Power connects. No boost this time. Snorunt still going for that double team. Still looking for Moody boosts that are actually useful to it. Will-O-Wisp and his Ditto does, or the Sableye does nothing because Sableye is a dark type and it's Prankster Will-O-Wisp. Sableye goes for Metronome, lands Wonder Room. We just saw Wonder Room in the last set. Another thing these two sets have in common. As Snorunt, it is getting worn down by those Ancient Powers. Actually, the Wonder Room backfires for them here as Snorunt takes this one way worse than the others. So it's probably especially bulky Snorunt, but yeah, that is not to its benefit here. It'll drop to burn damage. But first it'll land a Frost Breath. Just kidding, it misses. It drops to the burn. And now it's just Circuitry and Sableye. Metronome into Stomping Tantrum. They're still consistently attacking the Pokemon right in front of them, so I think Metronome must just work that way. But, I feel like there was something I wanted to check on Bulbapedia after this. That might have been it, but I don't even remember now. Anyway, Stomping Tantrum into Circuitry would have been good for the Nothing Burger, but I don't know if it was possible. Water Shuriken back does nothing. Thunderbolt into Togetic. Ancient Power misses the KO on Circuitry. Togetic is pretty badly worn down now. Metronome into Whirlpool. Everything's going into the Pokemon immediately across from it. I'm just going to assume that's how Metronome works. The Sableye gets Oblivion Wing here. The Sableye has been getting some really exciting move choices, but the Ditto is immune. Circuitry knocks out Togetic. Silvally is back, though. That Rock-type Silvally. Ditto protects. Silvally protects. Metronome gets Dive. That is super effective on Silvally, but I think it has to target Ditto, the way this has been going so far. Discharge into both protects. What a perfect storyline for this set. Metronome moves were so consistently targeting the Pokemon across from the user that I became convinced that it just works that way. And then right here in the end game, Ditto gets an Energy Ball into Circuitry for the KO, and only Sableye remains for the Whiscash. Dive misses the KO on Silvally. Ditto uses Stealth Rock. Silvally gets burned and just goes for Parting Shot. That'll weaken any Hex coming out from the Sableye. Ditto Hex does a lot. Sableye Hex does not quite enough after the special attack drop, but this is a speed tie. But Ditto wins the speed tie. Crazy exhibition match. Again, this one does not count toward the standings, but two very close games that genuinely could have gone either way in their end games. The Nothing Burger pulled out both of them. And they take the 2-0. It does nothing for the standings, but they get any bragging rights that come with that. And that now is the end of Prismatic Draft League Season 8. The regular season. There are still playoffs ahead. Let's take a look at the bracket. And with that, the regular season is done, and we have the final playoff bracket. The cooler Dreamyard Darkrais end up taking that last playoff spot, going exactly 500 and getting 8th place out of it, echoing last season's champion in doing that. We'll see if the echoes continue over the next few weeks. They are, by the way, the only team to go 4-4 on the season. Everything below this is 3-5 or 2-6. And up above, we have Pendragon United securing the #1 seed, the East Coast Espurr second, and then we actually did have a tie on record and differential. Staff United, of course, beat the Ontario Oguris head-to-head this week, and it does end up making a difference. I'm still not clear on what the next tiebreaker was after differential, but some kind of mathematics happened, and Staff United did end up taking that #3 seed. So the quarterfinal matchups are Pendragon United versus the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais, East Coast Espurr versus Dreamyard Darkrais, Staff United versus Bashful Bisharps, and Ontario Oguris versus Azure Bay Chatots. Should be a lot of fun. I don't have any more PDL to play myself this week, but this season I should say, but I will be right back next week to watch the quarterfinals. So see you then.